Joining me now on console here in Mission Control Houston is Michael Ferrulo, the lead inventory and storage officer for ATV3. Michael, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, as I mentioned, the cargo transfer can be very complicated and usually requires quite a few hours for the crew. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about just the basic process of taking all this cargo off? I mean, how do you guys track and maintain a list of everything that's on board?
Well, first of all, we have a piece of software called the Inventory and Management System, and that's basically something that we view on the ground here and the crew has on orbit, and that keeps an electronic copy of where everything is located on station. When things are manifested in the ATV itself, we build a unpacking list, basically an Excel spreadsheet that the crew can work off of, and transfer cargo from the ATV to its proper locations on ISS. It's a little bit complicated because some of the cargo has certain constraints that need to be followed. There's certain foam that's packed in there. So what we try to do to be efficient is we try to unpack the bags and leave the foam and the packing material within the ATV. Obviously, when we did the speedy unload on Saturday, we just basically had to grab what we could priority-wise and move that over to the ISS.
Okay, and we have some video that was just sent down of the crew as they were entering into ATV3 and taking a look at all of this cargo once they first got a chance to go inside. You can see here, and once they get inside, I mean there is quite a bit of cargo. And you mentioned that since it was kind of a speedy activity, you had to write up a prioritization list. Now, what items on board? How do you determine what takes priority over other items?
Well, basically Friday night, it was determined that we were going to go in and unload this vehicle based on crew time. Between the time when we started operations and the time when we would have had to possibly undock, there was about 30 crew hours in there. So the program came up with a priority list, transfer priority list. We set priorities for cargo 1 through 7, and items 1 through 3 were deemed important. So we attacked the cargo that we could within the crew time allotted and put that into a supplemental list that the crew could just work off of for the expedited cargo transfer.
Okay, and I mean, the numbers we were given, it says there's about 2.5 tons of dry cargo just on board, and that's said to include experiment hardware, spare parts, food, clothing, things like that. So generally, which of those items fall into that priority list, that high priority list?
The number one priority for this mission was food. There were some medical supplies, some payloads, and some large ORUs and spare parts, orbital replacement units. But food was the most important. Reason being is that the ATV was the largest food shipment and was supposed to be the big food supply for the year. So we weren't expected to see a large supply of food for another year from now.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about how much space is actually on board the station as well. I know, back with 135, they got a whole bunch of stuff that was supposed to keep them resupplied for a year, and so how much space is actually available on station to just take all this stuff and find it a quick home?
There's not a lot of easy space available, so it's a little bit of a challenge where we have to take what cargo we have on station, try to compact it down, take out things we don't need, put those into bags for trash, and we stage those for the next vehicle to leave. So there's a lot of rearranging, kind of how you would at home in your own house to clean up and organize your closet. And we find that when you organize stuff, we gain space. So when a new vehicle is coming, we try to do road to activities to clean up the PMM and other modules on this ISS to receive the cargo that's coming from the new vehicles.
Okay, and right now we're getting a look at the crew as they moved inside of ATV-3 or Eduardo Amaldi for the first time. It's currently docked to the Zvezda service module on board the International Space Station. Now, you see them wearing the gas mask. They have to generally, make sure that the air filters, everything are turned on before it just becomes kind of an extra living space. So I saw a number of the bags just have numbers on them. Is there like a barcode system or anything electronically to keep track of these, or is that kind of all just crew input?
No, there is barcodes and serial numbers on the bags. If you can see, the bags basically have large Sharpie numbers on them. Those are the serial numbers. That's for the crew to be able to see bags very quickly. There's also barcodes that are on there, so the crew can use the barcode scanner, and that interfaces directly with the inventory management system database that I talked about earlier. So the crew has two choices to either call down updates or they can scan those items, and it goes right into the database.
Okay, so a lot more difficult than just, unloading groceries out of the back of your car, that's for sure. Okay, well, about how much do off the top of your head about how much cargo the crew got through or how much you guys hope to get off in case there was going to be an undocking on Monday?
Well, the crew is extremely efficient. We scheduled about 15 hours prior to the power up of the ATV, and if that failed, we had another 15 hours before we needed to undock. And the crew actually ended up completing all 30 of those hours prior to the power up. So they were able to get very far ahead. They transferred about 1,391 kilograms of cargo. In volume wise, we estimate that to be 161 CTBE, and the CTB equivalent is, if you can see on the screen right now, that behind our crew member is a 2.0 CTB. So half of that volume there would be a 1 CTBE.
Okay. Well, again, some really cool video. Some of the first looks inside of ATV-3 as it is docked to the International Space Station when it arrived last Wednesday. Well, Mike, really appreciate you coming in and giving us a kind of a real good overview of how the crew interacts with all these cargo deliveries on board the International Space Station. As you can see, it's quite a bit of stuff on there, and as you mentioned, there's not the most space in the world right now on board the International Space Station, so they'll have to work pretty hard to find some spots for it. Well, Michael, thanks again. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks a lot. It was great to be here.